Legend tells of a caped crusader, Batman.
A grown man fights crime, and he does it dressed as a giant flying rodent.
I think it's safe to assume he had some issues.
These videos are not for children. If you are a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. And as previously stated some time before, I like Batman. Like a lot. Like a lot. And that's why today I'm here to talk about one of the less discussed and less known Batman-related shows, Birds of Prey. Now hear me out. Most people who watched this series hated it. Like absolutely despised it. Potentially loathed it. I, on the other hand, feel a bit differently. Now, does nostalgia play into the equation here? Yeah, maybe. I don't know, probably. However, I do think there's a lot of good that gets overlooked in this series. You know, whenever people do in fact look at it. So let's just throw up our bat signals and dive deep into the heart of New Gotham. And yes, I did say New Gotham, as that's what the series refers to the city as. The plot is simple enough, as the story takes place in a Gotham post-Batman. Not that he died or anything, but he just up and disappeared overnight. Now look, Batwoman basically does the same thing in its plot, but in both cases, this is complete bullshit. Batman would never up and abandon his hometown. Case in point, Bruce had more money than God himself and yet still lived in a city of ridiculous crime rates. All because he loved it so much. I don't like the concept of Bruce willingly leaving the mantle behind, especially without any clear rhyme or reason for it. To me, Batman Beyond handled the situation so much better, only having Bruce pass the torch when he was physically unable to keep up the job, and resorted to using a gun as a means of intimidation. And even in saying that, he still continued to be Batman's eyes and ears after he was unable to be Batman's full body. The idea that Bruce would randomly just take off is just so wildly out of character for him that I can't even buy any scenario in which that happens. Even in The Dark Knight Rises, where he's sitting in his chair reflecting on Rachel dying, to me it's like, dude, your fucking parents died. That's what got you involved in this to begin with. What are you saying? I'm sorry, that's just my own personal hang-up. I can't believe Batman giving up. Just straight up giving up. Unless his body was giving up on him. That makes more sense to me. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah.
Caped crusader, Batman, Catwoman, the queen of the criminal underworld.
I bet you didn't know about this.
Their passion left behind something extraordinary. A daughter.
I'm the Huntress, and you're the prey.
The story being presented is a world without Batman, where his former protege Barbara Gordon, once known as Batgirl, now wheelchair-bound, is working as Oracle, watching over the city with her, for lack of a better term, ward. That ward being Batman and Catwoman's daughter, Huntress. Now let me address the elephant in the room here, and I say this not being a jab at myself, surprisingly. If you've seen the Birds of Prey movie, you're thinking, wait a second, Huntress isn't Batman's daughter. I'm pretty sure her family was in the mob. Well, you're not wrong. At least not entirely. Now, if you're a DC fan, especially with the CW Crisis on Infinite Earth special, and the upcoming Flashpoint movie, I'm sure you're at least somewhat aware of the multiverse. Universes existing, multiple continuities, they're still under the same fucking dimension or whatever I don't even know how to, it's what's going on. Now, in most continuities, Huntress is Helena Bertinelli, the daughter of a well-known mob boss in Gotham, atoning for her family's sins while also getting revenge on those who took them out. But on the rare occasion in some other continuities, she's the daughter of two of the most legendary names in Gotham City. Personally, I'm probably in the minority, but I prefer the latter. Because if it came down to her, or the fourth boy wonder, you can bet your ass I'd choose Helena Kyle over Damian Wayne. Seriously, screw that kid, I'm not over it. Not that any of that is even relevant, because even in acknowledging that this is a version of Earth 2's Huntress, it's still almost nothing like the character. The first thing to note is that in this version of events, Catwoman was apparently a metahuman, which, to be fair, the amount of times that she miraculously avoided death and her inhuman cat-like, almost supernatural abilities, that kind of makes sense. Even if she was never officially depicted as one before, I can buy into that. That's not hitting my suspension of disbelief. Which means that this Huntress is part metahuman herself. Her action scenes are typically accompanied by a cat eye effect and a royalty-free tiger growl. Also, unlike her comic book counterpart, she never once throughout the duration of the show wears a mask or uses a crossbow, which makes her superhero getup seem that much more unnecessary. If you're not hiding your identity, what's the point of even playing dress up? Like, why are we doing this? Now you're just coming off as extra, and also somehow fewer at the same time. I don't know how you did it, but I don't like it. Regardless, I will say that Ashley Scott does really well for the material that she was given. She comes off as confident and maybe a little bit cocky. She's an ass kicker, but she never appears to be a Mary Sue. Often her attitude gets her in trouble and she finds herself in situations that she can't immediately manage. Personality-wise, I think she shares a lot with the source material. But everything else? Nah, might as well be a completely different person. Huntress is aided by Oracle, who's played by Dinah Meyer, and I truly believe that she gives one hell of a performance. To me, this is the ideal version of an older Batgirl, and the actress puts in the work. This is exactly what I envision a more mature Barbara Gordon would be like. This is a very down-to-earth human performance. While she may be a bit more experienced and wiser than her younger counterparts, she still has the ability of acting on emotion or even being vulnerable. I'm just going to come out and say it. I've already said it before in my top 5 Batgirls video, who's the best Batgirl, but she's my favorite incarnation of the character.
What's your number one?
My number one is Dinah Meyer from Birds of Prey.
Okay, I had a feeling.
To me, she was the most important character, and she was the best performance on all of the show.
Yes.
I always bought, to me, that was exactly what I imagined a grown, wheelchair-bound Barbara Gordon would be like. And, Dinah does a great job of just portraying the character as very human. It's a superhero show, you know what I mean? You could make it very goofy, very easily, and it seemed like an earnest performance, honestly. It seemed like, we got to see her as the super smart, leader of the Birds of Prey, but we also got to see a vulnerable human being as well. I know, I'm not part of a huge group here in saying that, but hear me out. If there was one reason, just one, to watch this series, it would definitely be her.
A huge Oracle fan. I'm just wondering, what was it like to go into that role? Did you know the character beforehand, or what did you do to prepare?
I honestly didn't know anything about Oracle. I just knew that she used to be the Batgirl. Like, that's what I knew, and I was like, do I get to wear that awesome suit? And they were like, yes, you do. But then no.
New to the team is Dinah, who's basically this series' version of the Black Canary, and is also the Black Canary's daughter. And before I say anything else, if you're thinking, wait a second, I know that face, I know this actress, but what do I know her from? Where have I seen her before? Well, the answer is here, in Batwoman, as little Black Canary Jr. would go on to play Kate Kane's sister, Beth, or her preferred alias, Alice. Originally, the character was meant to be a retconned version of the Black Canary, who instead of the canary cry had psychic abilities for some reason. Like I said, this is not comic accurate at all and is entirely its own thing, loosely derived from other continuities. But it was later re-retconned, is that a word? I'm not entirely sure. That she was in fact the daughter of the original Black Canary, who was played by Aunt Becky. One of the better episodes of the show is when Lori Loughlin explains to her daughter that she gave her up to foster care to try to provide her a better life. Which is really bullshit, because if you wanted to provide your metahuman daughter a better life, why wouldn't you just help her lie her way through college? Wait, what? Over time it's revealed that, like her mother who came and went before her, she too has the canary cry. It's hardly ever brought up, but that's because there's only 13 episodes of the entire series.
All are super grateful that we were able to play the characters we were, and
grateful for the fans that
I
keep
was
us
going to
alive.
say, still, this is 15 years.
The show also starred everyone's favorite Criminal Minds FBI profiler, Shamar Moore. And he plays... I don't fucking know, he's just Shamar Moore. Hold on, actually, let me look this up a second. Detective Reese. Yes, I knew that. Detective Reese. Shamar Moore plays Detective Reese. So apparently, the man is typecast. You take one look at this guy and think, what kind of badge is he wearing? What I liked about this role, other than Shamar Moore's performance, is that there was actually an interesting backstory created for him. Reese's father was prominent mob boss Al Hawk, And in order to get out of his father's shadow and clear his own conscience, he took on a life of putting away the people his father worked with, eventually arresting his own flesh and blood along the way. I think that's a real interesting dynamic, and seeing him and his father interact in the series was kind of compelling for me as a child. I should also note that since the series came out, Shamar has also gone on to voice Cyborg in several DC projects. So, booyah. Outside of the main cast, there really isn't a whole lot of play from other notable characters from Batman's lore. We get a couple flashback scenes which showcase Batman, Catwoman, Batgirl, and the Joker in some shots, but they're usually short-lived. Regardless, as a kid growing up, I remember being so pumped when some of these came out. I got to see my favorite heroes and villains, even in short spurts here and there. That meant the world to me. You know, that we weren't getting a new, more intricate and more detailed movie every couple months. You had to wait like 5 years, which is a lifetime away when you're, only 5 years old. You have to remember the last time I got to see a live-action Batman was George Clooney. So whether you love this or you hate this, most of you hate this, you have to at least admit, compared to that, this is one hell of an upgrade. Lady Shiva makes an appearance as her past with Batgirl is explored, and in this version of events, Barbara's involvement may or may not have led to Shiva's sister's accidental death. Clayface shows up toward the end of the show's run, in which it's revealed that he was the one who killed Helena's mother, after being hired by the Joker to do so, I think. The Clayface arc, to me at least, is a highlight of the series, but in the same vein, it's obviously really rushed. And that's probably because it was. More on that shortly. And Alfred, for some reason, is still alive and kicking. How?
I don't know!
I have no earthly idea. Maybe the man's got good genes, maybe he took his vitamins, I'm not entirely sure. But Ian Abercrombie does a great job of reenacting Michael Gough's performance from the original Batman movies. I have to admit, I personally prefer my Alfreds being much more sarcastic and maybe a tad bit sardonic, but his wholesome take on the character absolutely makes my top 5. He comes off as this wise, all-knowing older man who's seen Bruce through his trials, but still comes across as human and not an exposition salad, like some other Alfreds have. Sorry, Mikey, I love you, but if I have to hear one more monologue, I don't give a fuck what you did in Bermuda. The series' main antagonist was played by Mia Sara, who some of you may know from her time in Ferris Bueller. Here she plays Harley Quinn, or more accurately, Harleen Quinzel. This version of the character keeps her alter ego mostly unknown. While she's still masquerading around as a psychologist, namely Huntress, she's secretly the one who helped Joker run his underground crime ring, but apparently only incognito, as no one seems to know who the hell she is. This alternate Harley is definitely a bit different from previous and later incarnations of the character. She's still sane enough to hide her insanity and is still functioning enough to run shit. This show treats Batman less like a man and more like a myth. He's more often than not regarded as fiction as opposed to fact. When his name does come up in passing from time to time, from locals and even from the NGPD, he's pretty much described as an urban legend.
Wait a minute, that's not Batman. What are you talking about? That's Batboy.
It ain't the Bat.
I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to imagine that a man who had a signal in the sky is only spoken of in whispers nowadays. The man who took down the criminal underworld is somehow underground. I don't know, just to me that makes more sense in a year one type story. But having at least a decade or two of crime fighting under his belt? Come on, everyone has seen those ears at least once. But then again, in this continuity, metahumans seem to be much more prevalent, and yet somehow no one knows about them either, so go figure. Ultimately, for one reason or another, Batman fans didn't really take to the series, and the show was cancelled only 11 episodes into its run, almost ending on a complete cliffhanger with no resolution to their stories. But luckily, it was given the green light for 2 extra episodes to help wrap things up.
The last few episodes, I think, were really strong in character and in tone, and we did our very best to complete a project that we felt so very was very precious.
The finale was pretty awesome though, right guys?
Finding out who killed Catwoman, killing off Wade, Barbara's boyfriend, which by the way, first time I mentioned him in this review, he was a thing. Turning Harleen Quinzel into Harley Quinn. Yeah, they did that. Except in this version of events, Harleen Quinzel is turned into a metahuman, which is something you can do in this continuity apparently. By means of science mumbo jumbo. That's how that works. Tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and decide I want to be a grapefruit, and then I'm gonna sit my ass in that chair, and then poof, that's it. Completely different species of species. Now, in all seriousness, I know this show isn't the greatest non-Batman Batman show that was ever made, because that title clearly goes to Gotham. It's an almost 2-decade-old show now that is incredibly dated, not fondly remembered by those who actually care to remember it. And when I say dated, let me really emphasize that even though it's dated now, I feel like even back then it was a bit passé. From the way the show treats its source material, to their often terrible song choices. Listen, if you're making a comic book show and you end your episode playing Michelle Branch, I'm sorry, that is a win in nobody's book. To the Matrixy fetish outfit that they gave baby Black Canary in the finale. I mean, come on. Looks like my old wrestling gear. That's not a compliment. It's bad. And cheap, but mostly bad. And don't even fucking get me started on the fact that the DVD releases changed the theme song to a low-energy Dawson's Creek sound. Like, I don't even want to think about it. My blood pressure's going through the roof. There were also creative choices that I personally never cared for, even when I was a child. Like, despite being in a wheelchair, Barbara develops a brace for her back that allows her to not only stand up, but also allows her to fight for a time being. I don't know, I think it might have been a little bit nicer for wheelchair users to be realistically represented on screen, and for comic book readers to get a more accurate version of this character. In my opinion, once Barbara becomes Oracle, her days of crime fighting are long behind her. She's done sacrificing her body for the greater good. Now she's supplying it her brain. Plus, Barbara always got the best character development after becoming Oracle. So I really wish they would have kept that energy instead of deciding late in the game that they wanted her to kick some ass. To me, as awesome as Batgirl is, her strong point isn't being strong.
And what's great is I think Oracle actually became a stronger character than Batgirl ever was, quite frankly. So, quite inspiring.
I also wasn't a big fan of Black Canary Jr. I think that she's easily the worst part of the series. And not because of the actress playing her, honestly, I think she's really good as Alice, and I'm pretty sure she has severe back pain from having to carry that series. But the role that she was given here was really. I did not write anything after that. I just said just with a series of dots, because my mind probably traveled off to somewhere else that wasn't talking about this character. Essentially, she was the annoying little sister of her surrogate family. Very much the Dawn Summers of this show, except with less dignity. It's not a great way of showcasing the character from the comics, and even retconning that she's actually the legendary hero's daughter, I don't think it does a lot to help matters either. It's still not great. And then saying that she's the Black Canary and she may have the canary cry, but she definitely does have telekinesis and the gift of premonition, I mean, it feels unnecessary. And on paper, it seems overwhelming, but in execution, it was extremely underwhelming, so there was not a medium ground found there. Having Harley as Harleen, making her the show's primary villain, its big bad, if you will, was a very different decision. While I do appreciate Mia Sara's stellar performance, it definitely isn't the Harley Quinn fans made famous. Other than a strange, snorty chuckle and the finale giving her a costume reminiscent of her old jester phase, there's nothing about this character that feels like Harley Quinn. And I don't think that we see nearly enough of Alfred.
Oh, Mistress Harley, bottle this.
Some of the sets also look cheap and empty and not realistic. It's not something I noticed a lot when I was younger, but a little bit older, now I do. Not all of them, just some. So some aren't great. Despite being a show set in the Batman mythos, sometimes references and familiar faces to things that fans know from the source are kind of far and few in between. Oh, here's a flashback of Catwoman. Oh, here's an alternate Scarecrow. Here's a reference to Bloodhaven. And that's almost it until the finale. The camera angles sometimes could be at least questionable and at worst highly annoying. You know, sometimes when you're sitting down watching the show, maybe in the earlier episodes, you kind of get the feeling that you're watching Battlefield Earth. This show is definitely a time capsule, an ancient relic of a long-forgotten past. And I think if you're going to watch the show, you need to just try and watch it and accept it as its own thing. The show is kind of similar to Smallville, which also came out around the same time. Except where Smallville was a pre-Superman prelude, Birds of Prey was a post-Batman premise. And whereas Smallville was a successful ongoing TV series, Birds of Prey Was not. Smallville lasted for 10 years. Birds of Prey just barely got past 10 episodes. So while there is a comparison to be made, there's also a lot of contrast as well. I think this short-lived show has its own charm, its own unique identity that I think is worth exploring. Because if you witness this, I'm sure for better or worse, it stayed with you. The show is filled with good performances from a lot of talented actors. And while the show may be somewhat frowned upon, looking back at it, I can't help but smile. I guess what I'm trying to say here is, you may say that I'm a Birds of Prey fan, but I'm not the only one. Which is why I'm going to pass this over to someone else who has some fond memories of this often forgotten show.
Infuso. What a great name you have. My name is Ashley Scott. Clear that you're a Birds of Prey fan. I am also a Birds of Prey fan. I loved working on the show, and I loved getting to know Helena Kyle. So much of her personality spoke to my own personality, and that was an awful lot of fun to play. I loved how edgy she was and how just fearless she was. I found her very inspiring. I remember when we shot the pilot, I was extremely nervous. And the scene when the detective comes in when I first meet Reese, that was the first scene that I had done. And they cinched up the suit and said action, and I was having a panic attack. I was so nervous. And that was a tight corset, so you can imagine. Those two don't go well together. But I said, excuse me, can I just have a small break? And I stepped away and I did some good breathing and went in, and we started rolling cameras, and that was it. Doing that episode, the water episode where I get attacked by the water guy, I thought, I have no idea how I'm going to do that because it was all CG. And I thought, how do you pretend you're choking on water that's not there, and that it's going up your nose also? So that was one for the creative books. I really loved working with everybody on that show. Rachel, I have a real sweet, sensitive spot for. I think she was young and kind and not affected by the business, which I appreciate. Dinah was super fun to work with. There's no funkiness there. That's what makes this journey so neat, to go through it with them, because we all really like each other. Anyway, man, I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate you asking me to do a cameo for you. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and thanks for being a fan. V, have a wonderful day.
I want to thank Ashley Scott for that cameo. Feel free to head on over to her cameo page and request one yourself. She seems like a pretty pleasant person. And hey, if you have enough characters, don't forget to let her know who sent you. I'll include her full cameo separately later on this channel, just to make sure in post and with all the editing that I do, I'm not somehow taking anyone's words out of context or misrepresenting them. For me, this video is kind of a tiptoe in the shallow end of the Birds of Prey pool. But if you'd be interested in seeing me take a deeper dive, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, and there may be a part 2 to all this. Though I gotta say, it would be perfectly poetic to end things here and not get a part 2, just like the show itself, as Birds of Prey wasn't even afforded a season 2. So let me know in the comment section what you think. Let me know if you loved or hated the show, or if this is the first time you're hearing about it, let me know if the show looks like it would interest you.
Oh my gosh, if that show was on now, we'd still be on the air. It was just before its time.
Anyway, with that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. You all are the Degenerates, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
Birds of Prey was really interesting for me because I was such a huge Batman fan growing up. Arrow, I think, kind of did what we were trying to do 10 years before. I watched Arrow the other day and I was like, God dang it, that's exactly like, oh!
Would the three of you return as those characters?
As Huntress or... Yes, yes. We
Would you guys like that?
Oracle, it's Huntress, come in.
Huntress, the comms are barely functional.
Barbara, can you hear me?
I need more time.
The wave's coming too quickly. You're gonna have to evac right now.